The sharp crack of splintering wood echoed across the suburban street as federal agents broke through the front door of 1478 Oak Ridge Lane. It was 5:47 a.m. on a bitter January morning in 2023, frost clinging to dormant lawns and mailboxes. David Mercer, respected high school janitor, volunteer firefighter and longtime Crawford County resident, stood frozen in his kitchen, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips, eyes wide with the realization that 18 years of careful deception had finally collapsed. David Mercer, you're under arrest for the abduction and murder of Lily Turner. Northern Michigan wears winter like a disguise. The endless white blankets everything, the dense pine forests, the abandoned logging roads, the secrets buried beneath decades of snowfall and silence. Crawford County exists as a collection of small towns where neighbors wave across frost-heaved streets and everyone's business intertwines like the bare branches overhead. The kind of place where doors remain unlocked and children still walk to bus stops alone, until they don't come home. For 18 years, someone moved among them, attended their community fundraisers, nodded solemnly at annual memorial services, and carried the terrible knowledge of what really happened that August morning in 2005. For 18 years, a monster wore the perfect camouflage: ordinariness. The arrest of David Mercer didn't just solve Michigan's most haunting cold case, it fractured the community's understanding of itself. How could evil live so comfortably among them, undetected? How could the man who fixed the high school drinking fountains, who plowed elderly neighbors' driveways after heavy snowfalls, who coached Little League, be responsible for stealing a 12-year-old girl from their midst? Sometimes the most dangerous predators don't hide in shadows. They hide in plain sight, behind familiar smiles and everyday routines, reminding us that the face of evil often looks remarkably, terrifyingly ordinary. Before we dive deeper into this shocking case that remained unsolved for nearly 2 decades, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. If you're fascinated by cold cases that finally find resolution and the complex investigations that bring justice to victims' families, you'll want to stay connected with Easy Case for more true crime stories that reveal the persistence of investigators who never give up. Crawford County sits in the northern reaches of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, where life moves to the rhythm of changing seasons. With just over 14,000 residents spread across dense forests and small townships, it's a place where everyone seems connected by only a few degrees of separation. Grayling, the county seat, serves as the area's beating heart, a modest downtown, with family-owned businesses, a courthouse that stood since 1908, and the Ausable River winding nearby, drawing tourists for its legendary trout fishing. The economy here has always balanced precariously on logging, tourism, and the nearby military training center. It's the kind of community where high school football games draw crowds regardless of the team's record, where the annual canoe marathon is marked on every calendar, and where families often trace their roots back generations. When tragedy strikes in places like Crawford County, it doesn't just make headlines, it tears through the social fabric that holds everyone together. The Turners were relatively new to this tight-knit world when they arrived in 2003. Michael Turner had accepted a position at the Regional Medical Center as a radiologist, moving his family from suburban Detroit to give them what he called a proper childhood, away from the city's complications. His wife Karen, a part-time librarian at the elementary school, quickly became known for her warm smile and willingness to volunteer. Their children, 14-year-old Jason and 12-year-old Lily, adapted to small-town life with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Lily, a 7th grader at Crawford Middle School in August 2005, was the kind of child who collected friends as easily as she collected the colorful rocks she displayed on her bedroom windowsill. With auburn hair usually pulled into a practical ponytail and a spattering of freckles across her nose, she balanced academics with an emerging talent for cross-country running. Her science teacher would later describe her as curious about everything, while her best friend remembered her as always the one to stand up for kids getting picked on. The yellow backpack she carried, the one found abandoned along Pinewood Drive, had been a back-to-school gift, chosen specifically for its bright color because, as Lily had told her mother, you can always find yellow, even in the woods. The Turners represented something quintessentially American, a family seeking a simpler life, believing in the safety and wholesomeness of small-town America. They never imagined that their search for innocence would end in its violent destruction. I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how these stories reach people across the country and around the world, reminding us that the pursuit of justice knows no boundaries. Helen Carter had driven bus number 17 for Crawford County schools since 1989. At 62, she knew every dip in the road, every seasonal pothole, and most importantly, every child on her route. She prided herself on running exactly 7 minutes late to the Turner stop on Pinewood Drive, not because she was behind schedule, but because Lily Turner was reliably 5 minutes late, and Helen had quietly adjusted her timing to accommodate the perpetually rushing girl. That morning was different, Helen would later testify. I pulled up at 7:32 and no Lily. I waited an extra minute, which I never do. Something felt off. No movement from the house, no flash of yellow coming through the trees. Helen completed her route with growing unease. Upon reaching the school, she immediately notified the office that Lily Turner hadn't appeared at her stop. The school secretary called the Turner home, where the call went unanswered. Both parents had already left for work, assuming their daughter was safely on her way to school. At 9:17 a.m., Karen Turner received the call at the library that would divide her life into before and after. Lily hadn't arrived at school. Karen's initial reaction, irritation at what she assumed was her daughter skipping class, dissolved into confusion, then crawling dread. She called Michael, who left the medical center immediately. By 10:05 a.m., the Turners had confirmed Lily wasn't at home, at school, or with any friends. Michael Turner began driving the bus route, retracing the path his daughter would have walked that morning. It was Michael who found the yellow backpack thrown into a shallow ditch approximately 220 yards from their driveway. The backpack was what broke me, Karen Turner would later tell reporters. It was unzipped, like she'd been reaching for something. One of her dolphin stickers was half peeled off. Lily would never damage those stickers. She'd spent an entire afternoon placing them just right. The Crawford County Sheriff's Department officially classified Lily as missing at 11:23 a.m. By noon, deputies had established a perimeter around the recovery site of the backpack. By 2 p.m., the first search teams were assembling. Volunteers from the fire department, off-duty police officers, and neighbors who'd heard the news through frantic phone calls and early social media posts. The initial search focused on the densely wooded areas surrounding Pinewood Drive. August in northern Michigan meant thick underbrush, the forest floor a tangle of ferns and fallen branches that complicated the search. Temperatures reached 84 degrees that afternoon, unusually warm for the region, adding to searchers' discomfort as they formed lines to methodically comb through the woods, calling Lily's name until their voices grew hoarse. For the Turner family, those first 48 hours unfolded in a blur of primal fear and desperate hope. They sat in their living room, transformed now into an impromptu command center, as officers asked increasingly difficult questions. Did Lily have any conflicts with classmates? Had she mentioned anyone making her uncomfortable? Had there been any changes in her behavior? We kept waiting for the door to open, Jason, Lily's brother, recalled years later. I remember Mom jumping every time a car pulled into the driveway. Dad just kept pacing, wearing a path in the carpet. I don't think either of them slept for those first few days. By the second day, the search had expanded to include neighboring counties. Michigan State Police brought in K-9 units and a helicopter equipped with thermal imaging. Local news stations broadcast Lily's school photo hourly. Volunteers established a refreshment station at the township hall for searchers, while others printed flyers bearing Lily's image and the now familiar description. 12 years old, 5 and 3, 110 pounds, auburn hair, last seen wearing jeans and a green t-shirt with a turtle design. The community's response was immediate and overwhelming. Over 300 volunteers joined the search efforts. Local businesses donated supplies. The pastor at Crawford Community Church organized a prayer vigil attended by nearly 700 people, half the town's population. But as the second day ended with no trace of Lily beyond her abandoned backpack, a terrible realization began to settle over Crawford County. The search for a missing girl was quietly transforming into something darker. In the Turner home, Karen clutched her daughter's pajamas still folded on her bed, while Michael sat at the kitchen table with investigators, his voice hollow as he answered the same questions for the dozenth time, hoping desperately that some overlooked detail might emerge to bring their daughter home. By day 5, the Crawford County Sheriff's Department had received 187 tips through their hastily established hotline. Each lead, no matter how implausible, required investigation, stretching the department's limited resources to breaking point. Sheriff Tom Grantham, a 20-year veteran with deep roots in the community, requested assistance from the Michigan State Police, bringing in Detective Sergeant Andrea Wilkins to co-lead the investigation. "We pursued every possible angle," Wilkins would later explain. "A girl doesn't simply vanish without someone seeing something. But in rural areas with limited traffic and vast wilderness, traditional investigative approaches face unique challenges." The first promising lead came from a gas station attendant who reported seeing a girl matching Lily's description in a blue pickup truck around 7:30 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance. For 48 frantic hours, officers tracked down every blue pickup registered within a 100-mile radius, all 118 of them. Each owner was interviewed, each vehicle inspected. The lead collapsed when security footage from a neighboring business revealed the truck had contained a different child. The attendant's description influenced by the missing person reports saturating local media. Another dead end arrived when cadaver dogs alerted near an abandoned well on property 3 miles from the Turner home. The subsequent excavation revealed only the remains of a deer that had fallen in months earlier. Each false hope extracted a toll on both investigators and the community's morale. As days stretched into weeks, the search area expanded to cover over 15,000 acres of dense forest, abandoned mining sites, and remote lakes. Volunteer numbers dwindled as the initial surge of community support gave way to the grinding reality of everyday life resuming. The command post at the township hall, once bustling with activity, grew quieter. Maps on the walls accumulated more red pins marking searched areas, but produced no answers. For the Turner family, September arrived with the cruel normalcy of a new school year. Jason returned to classes, walking past his sister's empty locker daily. Karen took indefinite leave from the library, unable to face the children who would inevitably ask about Lily. Michael continued working reduced hours, his colleagues noting how he aged years in mere weeks. "The not knowing is what destroys you," Karen confided to her sister in a late-night phone call recorded in the sister's journal. "If she's out there somewhere, is she cold? Is she hungry? Is she scared? And if she's gone, where is she? Where do I go to talk to her? Where do I bring flowers? There's no grave, no closure, just this endless, horrible limbo." The investigation's first major setback came in October, when the FBI, which had provided technical assistance and additional personnel, scaled back their involvement as other cases demanded attention. The second blow fell when media coverage, which had initially extended to national outlets, contracted to occasional local updates. By the 6-month mark, the active investigation had been reduced to a single detective working the case part-time. The Turner family marked Lily's 13th birthday in January, with a cake no one could bear to cut and candles no one had the heart to blow out. The case file grew to contain over 1,200 pages of interviews, tips, and forensic reports. Evidence collected included the yellow backpack, which yielded no useful fingerprints or DNA, soil samples from 27 locations, and surveillance footage from every business within a 10-mile radius of the abduction site. None provided the breakthrough investigators desperately needed. Sheriff Grantham, facing re-election and criticism over the handling of the case, held a press conference on the 1-year anniversary of Lily's disappearance. "This investigation remains active and ongoing," he assured the dwindling crowd of reporters. "We will never stop looking for Lily Turner." Behind the determined words, however, the reality was stark. Without new evidence, the case was stalling. For the Turners, that first year passed in a fog of grief, anger, and diminishing hope. They established a modest scholarship in Lily's name. They appeared on regional true crime shows. They consulted psychics despite their previous skepticism. They did anything that might keep their daughter's story alive in public consciousness. "Sometimes I wake up and for just a second, I forget," Michael told a documentary crew filming a segment on the case. Then it all comes crashing back, and I have to learn how to breathe again. I'm curious, what time is it where you're watching from? Drop it in the comments below. It's a reminder that somewhere in the world at every moment, someone is searching for answers about a loved one who vanished, just like Lily Turner. If this case has captured your attention so far, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who appreciate in-depth true crime stories. Your engagement helps these important cases reach wider audiences and reminds us all that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. As 2006 faded into 2007 and then into subsequent years, Crawford County underwent subtle transformations. The missing posters, featuring Lily's smiling face, once plastered on every storefront, telephone pole, and community bulletin board, gradually disappeared, weathered away by rain and snow, or deliberately removed by business owners uncomfortable with the constant reminder of tragedy. Only the bulletin board at Crawford Market maintained a permanent poster, laminated and replaced whenever it showed signs of wear, by the store's owner who had coached Lily in youth soccer. The community's relationship with safety evolved. Parents who had once allowed children to walk to school or play unsupervised now arranged carpools and established strict check-in protocols. The school district installed security cameras and required visitor badges. The bus stop where Lily had waited that August morning was relocated to a more visible location with a small shelter built by local contractors who donated their time and materials. For the Turner family, the passage of time brought no relief. Karen and Michael separated briefly in 2008, the strain of their shared grief creating an unbridgeable distance before they recommitted to facing their pain together. Jason graduated high school in 2009 and chose a college close to home, unable to venture too far from the place his sister might someday return to. "We had to learn to live in two realities simultaneously," Karen explained during a rare interview in 2010. "One where we functioned in daily life, worked, shopped for groceries, paid bills, and another where our daughter might walk through the door any day. You can't abandon either reality without losing yourself completely." The Turners channeled their anguish into action. They established the Lily Turner Foundation, which provided resources for families of missing children and funded advanced training for rural law enforcement in handling abduction cases. Karen became certified in child safety education, traveling to schools throughout Michigan to teach prevention strategies. Michael joined a national network of medical professionals who volunteered their services to help identify remains. Their refusal to surrender to despair inspired many, though few understood the private toll of their public strength. Each August 24th, the anniversary of Lily's disappearance, the community gathered for a remembrance walk that began at the Turner home and proceeded to the middle school. What started as a massive outpouring of hundreds of participants in the first few years gradually diminished to a core group of about 50 dedicated individuals by the 10th anniversary. Yet the smaller numbers perhaps reflected a deeper commitment. These weren't people drawn by the initial shock and media attention, but those who understood the importance of bearing witness to an unresolved wound in their community's history. The case file remained officially open, but gathered dust in the records room of the sheriff's department. 3 different sheriffs would hold office in the years following Lily's disappearance, each promising to bring fresh eyes to the investigation, each ultimately distracted by more immediate crimes and limited resources. Detective Wilkins, who had co-led the initial investigation, requested to review the file annually on her own time, a personal ritual she maintained even after transferring to another jurisdiction. By 2015, a decade after Lily vanished, Crawford County had developed an uneasy relationship with its most notorious unsolved case. Newer residents sometimes learned of the story only when the annual Remembrance Walk disrupted traffic. The middle school dedicated a small garden with a stone bearing Lily's name, an acknowledgement that balanced remembrance with the need to move forward. Local media ran perfunctory anniversary pieces that grew shorter each year. Yet beneath this apparent fading of collective memory, certain individuals maintained a quiet vigilance. Helen Carter, the bus driver, now retired, kept a photo of Lily in her wallet. Officer Raymond Diaz, who had been first to respond when Michael found the backpack, reviewed his personal notes on the case every few months. Lily's best friend, now in college, organized an annual fundraiser for the foundation. And in the Turner home, Lily's bedroom remained largely unchanged, a museum of frozen time. Her collection of rocks still lined the windowsill. Her favorite stuffed animal still sat propped against her pillow. The calendar on her wall still displayed August 2005. "People ask why we don't move on," Michael once said at a foundation event. "But that implies there's somewhere to move to, some resolution waiting if we just try hard enough. Without answers, there is no moving on. There's only moving forward while carrying the weight of not knowing." The landscape of forensic science underwent a revolution between 2005 and 2020. Techniques that existed only in research laboratories during the initial investigation into Lily Turner's disappearance became standard practice in police departments across the country. DNA analysis evolved from requiring substantial samples to identifying individuals from microscopic traces. Digital forensics advanced from basic data recovery to sophisticated pattern analysis across multiple platforms. And perhaps most significantly, genetic genealogy emerged as a groundbreaking approach to identifying suspects through family DNA connections, a method that had solved dozens of decades-old cold cases nationwide. These technological leaps might have bypassed the Lily Turner case entirely if not for Detective Mara Reeves. Hired by the Crawford County Sheriff's Department in 2018, Reeves had no personal connection to the original investigation. She hadn't lived in the area when Lily disappeared, hadn't participated in the searches, hadn't watched the community's hope gradually dissolve into resignation. What she possessed instead was a reputation for resolving cold cases in her previous position with the Detroit Police Department, and a stubborn refusal to accept that any case was truly unsolvable. "Cold cases aren't cold because they can't be solved," Reeves explained in a departmental training session she conducted in 2019. "They're cold because they haven't been examined with the right tools or the right perspective. Evidence doesn't disappear. Our ability to understand what it's telling us just hasn't caught up yet." During her first year with the department, Reeves familiarized herself with all open cases, but the Turner file repeatedly drew her attention. In January 2020, she formally requested permission to re-examine the evidence using modern techniques. Sheriff Marcus Holloway, himself relatively new to the position, approved her request with limited expectations, but appreciated her initiative. The yellow backpack, Lily's backpack, had been properly preserved in the evidence room for 15 years. While the initial examination had yielded no usable fingerprints or obvious DNA evidence, Reeves believed contemporary methods might tell a different story. She arranged for the backpack to be sent to the Michigan State Police Forensic Laboratory for advanced touch DNA analysis, a technique that could potentially recover DNA from skin cells left behind when someone handled an object. Simultaneously, Reeves began the painstaking process of digitizing the entire case file, all 200+ pages of interviews, tips, and reports. Using case management software unavailable to the original investigators, she created a comprehensive timeline and relationship map connecting every person mentioned in the investigation. This digital approach revealed subtle patterns that paper files had obscured. Certain individuals appearing peripherally at multiple points in the timeline, inconsistencies in statements that hadn't been flagged, and potential witnesses who had never been fully interviewed. The original investigation was thorough given the resources available at the time, Reeves noted in her case journal, but they were drinking from a fire hose of information without today's tools to filter and organize it effectively. In March 2020, the first breakthrough arrived. The forensic laboratory reported recovering a partial DNA profile from the backpack's strap, genetic material that didn't match Lily or any family members. The sample was degraded after 15 years, but scientists were able to develop a workable profile using amplification techniques that hadn't existed when the backpack was first collected. This profile was entered into CODIS, the national DNA database, but returned no immediate matches. Undeterred, Reeves pursued another avenue. With departmental approval and the Turner family's consent, she contracted with a private genetic genealogy service to analyze the DNA and search for potential familial connections. This approach, which had famously identified the Golden State Killer in 2018, could potentially identify relatives of the DNA contributor, narrowing the field of suspects even without a direct match in criminal databases. By summer 2020, Reeves had also re-interviewed 27 key witnesses from the original investigation. Memory is notoriously unreliable, but she discovered that the passage of time sometimes worked in her favor. People who had been reluctant to share certain observations in 2005 due to community connections, fear of getting involved, or uncertainty about relevance, now spoke more freely. Details previously deemed insignificant took on new importance when viewed through the lens of modern investigative approaches. "I remember a blue pickup that seemed out of place," one witness told Reeves during a re-interview. "I mentioned it back then, but the focus was so heavy on finding the girl that I don't think anyone followed up. The truck had been parked near the school for a few days before she disappeared. Then I never saw it again." In September 2020, the genetic genealogy results arrived, providing a crucial narrowing of focus. The DNA from the backpack likely belonged to someone related to a specific family with deep roots in northern Michigan. Reeves began the methodical process of building family trees and identifying male relatives who would have been in the Crawford County area in 2005. For the first time in 15 years, the investigation had momentum. The Turner family, who had been briefed on these developments, approached the holiday season with a cautious sense of hope they hadn't permitted themselves to feel in years. "I'm curious, what's the weather like where you're watching from today? Drop a comment below." Just as weather conditions can affect how evidence is preserved at a crime scene, your perspective on this case might be shaped by where you are right now. If you followed this case to this point, I'd love to hear your theories in the comments. What details stand out to you? What questions would you have asked if you were investigating? Your perspective might highlight aspects of the case others haven't considered. On December 17, 2022, Detective Mara Reeves sat in her office reviewing the latest genetic genealogy report. After 2 years of methodical investigation, the DNA profile from Lily's backpack had led to a family tree with 3 potential male relatives in Crawford County during 2005. 2 had been eliminated through additional DNA testing. The third was David Mercer, 58, currently employed as head custodian at Crawford High School, the same school Lily's brother Jason had attended. Reeves had deliberately kept Mercer on the periphery of her investigation while building an airtight case. Background checks revealed he had worked in the school district since 1998, starting as a groundskeeper before moving to the janitorial staff. His personnel file contained glowing reviews, noting his reliability and willingness to handle emergency maintenance issues at all hours. He had no criminal record beyond a DUI in 1992. He was divorced, lived alone in a modest ranch-style home, and volunteered with the volunteer fire department. Most disturbingly, Reeves discovered Mercer had actually participated in the search for Lily in 2005, joining the volunteer teams that combed the woods near where her backpack was found. He hid by being helpful, Reeves would later testify. He positioned himself as part of the solution rather than the problem. It's a classic predator tactic, inserting yourself into the investigation to monitor progress and appear above suspicion. Surveillance of Mercer began in early January 2023. Officers discreetly collected a discarded coffee cup from his trash, providing a DNA sample that confirmed what the genetic genealogy had suggested. Mercer's DNA matched the profile found on Lily's backpack. With this confirmation, Reeves obtained search warrants for Mercer's home, vehicle, and a storage unit he maintained in neighboring Roscommon County. The pre-dawn arrest on January 23, 2023, was deliberately timed to catch Mercer off guard. As federal agents and state police secured the property, Detective Reeves and Sheriff Holloway approached the front door. What followed was the moment of confrontation that investigators had worked toward for 17 years. The evidence recovered from Mercer's property proved devastating. In a locked cabinet in his garage, investigators found a small box containing items that could only have belonged to Lily: a dolphin sticker removed from her backpack, a hair tie with strands of auburn hair still attached, and a school ID card. His storage unit yielded a collection of newspaper clippings about the case, and, hidden beneath fishing equipment, a green T-shirt with a turtle design matching the description of what Lily had been wearing when she disappeared. Digital forensic specialists recovered deleted files from Mercer's computer, showing he had regularly searched for updates on the Turner case over the years. He had also researched forensic techniques, DNA evidence degradation, and statute of limitations for various crimes, revealing his ongoing concern about eventually being caught. The arrest sent shockwaves through Crawford County. David Mercer wasn't an outsider or drifter. He was a fixture in the community. He had attended the annual remembrance walks for Lily. He had maintained the memorial garden at the middle school. He had even occasionally exchanged pleasantries with Michael and Karen Turner when their paths crossed in town. "I fixed a leaking pipe in his house once," Michael Turner told reporters after the arrest. "He offered me coffee. We talked about fishing, all while he knew what he'd done to our daughter. The human mind can't process that level of evil. How had Mercer evaded detection for so long?" The investigation revealed multiple factors that had worked in his favor. In 2005, he had lived in a different house, driving a red pickup truck, rather than the blue one witnesses had reported seeing. His position as a school district employee hadn't raised flags because he worked at the high school, not Lily's middle school. And critically, the original investigation had focused primarily on known sex offenders and individuals with criminal histories, categories that excluded Mercer. Former Sheriff Grantham, now retired, defended the original investigation while acknowledging its limitations. "We didn't have the technology then that exists now. DNA testing required samples we simply didn't have. And in a community where everyone knows everyone, it's almost impossible to suspect a person who presents as completely ordinary." Court documents would later reveal that Mercer had carefully planned the abduction after observing Lily's routine for several weeks. On that August morning, he had deliberately driven past her bus stop, offered her a ride due to the unusually warm weather, and then used his position as a school employee to gain her trust. The backpack had been discarded to mislead investigators about the location of the abduction. Perhaps most disturbing was the evidence suggesting Mercer had continued his life without apparent guilt or stress. Colleagues described him as even-tempered and reliable. His ex-wife, interviewed after his arrest, expressed complete shock, stating he had always been normal, maybe a little distant emotionally but never violent or concerning. Psychologists would later suggest that Mercer represented a particularly dangerous type of predator, one capable of compartmentalizing his crimes so completely that he could function in society without raising suspicion, maintaining the perfect disguise of normalcy while harboring unthinkable secrets. David Mercer's first court appearance occurred on January 25, 2023, in the Crawford County Courthouse, the same building where, years earlier, community members had gathered to organize search parties for Lily. The preliminary hearing lasted just 37 minutes, with Mercer appearing via video link from the county detention center, where he was being held without bail. He spoke only to confirm his name and that he understood the charges: first-degree murder, kidnapping, and criminal sexual conduct. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Vanessa Cortez, outlined the strength of their case. DNA evidence linking Mercer to the backpack, items belonging to Lily found in his possession, digital evidence of his ongoing interest in the case, and most significantly, a detailed confession Mercer had provided following his arrest. "The defendant has admitted to abducting Lily Turner on August 24, 2005, Cortez stated for the record. He has provided information about the location of her remains that only the perpetrator could know. On February 3, 2023, based on Mercer's confession, investigators located Lily's remains in a remote area of Huron National Forest, approximately 22 miles from where she had disappeared. The site was accessible only via logging roads and would have been nearly impossible to find without specific directions. After 17 years exposed to the elements, forensic recovery was painstaking, but sufficient evidence remained for positive identification through dental records and DNA comparison. For the Turner family, The recovery of Lily's remains represented a pivotal moment in their long journey. Though the confirmation of her death extinguished any lingering hope they might have harbored, it also provided the closure they had sought for nearly 2 decades. "We always knew in our hearts," Karen Turner said during a brief statement to the press, "but knowing and having proof are different things. Now we can bring her home. Now we can say goodbye properly." The Turner family made the difficult decision to attend every court proceeding, sitting in the front row as details of the investigation were presented. During the 4-day preliminary hearing in March 2023, they heard Mercer's confession read into the record, a clinical recounting of events so horrific that several jurors requested breaks to compose themselves. Rather than proceed to trial, Mercer accepted a plea agreement in May 2023. In exchange for pleading guilty to all charges and providing complete details about the crime, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty. On June 12, 2023, Judge Eleanor Whitman sentenced Mercer to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, both Michael and Karen Turner delivered victim impact statements. Michael spoke of the 17 years of birthdays, graduations, and holidays that were stolen from their family. Karen addressed Mercer directly. "You took her life in a day, but you took 17 years from ours. No sentence can restore that time, but knowing you will never again walk free provides some measure of justice." For the investigators who had pursued the case across decades, the resolution brought complex emotions. Detective Andrea Wilkins, who had co-led the original investigation and reviewed the file annually, even after transferring to another jurisdiction, attended the sentencing. "Cold cases stay with you," she explained afterward. "They become part of who you are as an investigator. This outcome doesn't erase the years of frustration, but it validates the belief that persistence matters." Detective Mara Reeves, whose determination had finally broken the case, received commendations from both state and federal law enforcement agencies. She used the attention to advocate for increased funding for cold case units and modern forensic training for rural departments. "The Turner case demonstrates that no case is truly unsolvable," Reeves stated during a law enforcement conference in October 2023. "With advances in technology, cases that seem to hit dead ends can suddenly open new pathways to justice. The evidence was always there. We just needed better tools to understand what it was telling us." The resolution of Lily Turner's case had immediate impacts beyond Crawford County. Within 6 months, 3 other cold cases in Michigan were reopened specifically for genetic genealogy analysis. The state legislature passed the Lily Turner Act, allocating dedicated funding for cold case investigations, and creating a specialized unit within the state police focused on long unsolved crimes. For families of missing persons across the country, the Turner case represented a powerful message. That time, while it may complicate investigations, doesn't make justice impossible. That evidence, properly preserved, can speak decades later. That the dedication of even a single investigator can make the difference between a case that fades into history and one that finally finds resolution. As Sheriff Holloway noted during a press conference following the sentencing, "This case reminds us that in the pursuit of justice, persistence is often our most powerful tool." Before we close this chapter on one of Michigan's most haunting cold cases, take a moment to subscribe to Easy Case if you haven't already. Each subscription helps us continue bringing these important stories to light, stories that remind us justice can arrive even after decades of silence. Hit that notification bell too, so you never miss our upcoming investigations into cases that continue to search for resolution. On September 17, 2023, nearly 8 months after David Mercer's arrest, the community of Crawford County gathered once more, not for a remembrance walk, but for a memorial service. Lily Turner was finally laid to rest in Riverside Cemetery, beneath a maple tree that would blaze with color each autumn. The funeral procession stretched for nearly a mile, including not only those who had known Lily, but many who had come to know her story over the years. Helen Carter, the bus driver who first noticed Lily's absence, now in her 80s, sat in the front row beside the Turner family. Detective Reeves stood quietly at the back, her presence a reminder of how persistence had finally brought this moment of closure. The headstone, simple yet elegant, bore Lily's name, her dates, and the words chosen by her family: "Found at last, loved always." In the aftermath of resolution, Crawford County began its own healing process. The community that had been fractured by suspicion, fear, and eventually apathy now faced the difficult task of reconciling with the knowledge that evil had lived among them undetected. Town hall meetings addressed questions of community safety and vigilance without paranoia. The school district implemented new security measures while working to preserve the openness and trust that make small communities special. The Lily Turner Foundation, established during those years of uncertainty, transformed its mission. Rather than focusing solely on missing children, it expanded to support families, navigating the aftermath of resolved cases, providing resources for funeral expenses, counseling, and community reintegration after years spent in the limbo of not knowing. Karen Turner returned to her position at the library, finding purpose in being surrounded by the children whose safety had become her life's mission. Michael continued his work in radiology, but also began speaking at law enforcement conferences about the family experience in long-term missing persons cases. Jason, now an adult with a family of his own, established a scholarship for students pursuing careers in forensic science. "Lily's legacy isn't just about how she was taken from us," Karen explained during the dedication of a permanent memorial at Crawford Middle School. "It's about how her case changed, how we investigate crimes, how we preserve evidence, how we never give up on finding answers. Every cold case solved because of techniques pioneered in her investigation is part of her legacy too." The ripple effects extended far beyond Crawford County. Law enforcement agencies across the country reviewed their evidence storage protocols to ensure biological samples were preserved in ways that would accommodate future technological advances. Cold case units received increased funding and training. The Lily Turner Protocol became shorthand for the systematic application of new forensic techniques to long-dormant investigations. Perhaps most significantly, families of missing persons found renewed hope. In the year following Mercer's conviction, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported a 32% increase in families requesting that old cases be re-examined using genetic genealogy and other modern techniques. The story of Lily Turner, her life, her disappearance, and the long road to justice ultimately transcended the boundaries of true crime to become a testament to human perseverance. It demonstrated how a community, a family, and dedicated investigators could maintain their commitment to truth across decades. It showed how science could eventually bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable, and it proved that time, while it may complicate the pursuit of justice, cannot ultimately prevent it if enough determined people refuse to let the silence win. As Michael Turner said during his final interview about the case, "For 17 years we carried the weight of not knowing. Now we carry a different weight, the knowledge of what happened to our daughter. It's still heavy, but it's a burden we can bear because it comes with truth. And truth, no matter how painful, is always better than uncertainty." In Crawford County today, the yellow ribbons are gone, the posters have been taken down. But the lesson remains: justice delayed is not necessarily justice denied. Sometimes it's simply justice waiting for the right moment, the right technology, and the right people who refuse to give up.